Lunalight Liger Dancer is the essence of a bad card design. Hello guys and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, we're taking a look at a Liger Dancer and why it is a terrible, no good, very bad card that genuinely is baffling as to how it exists. So, let me explain. Real quick, Liger Dancer is part of the Lunalight archetype and requires some hefty material to summon. However, with that being said, all of these materials can be very easily obtained and banished from the grave as opposed to utilizing them on field or in hand in order to facilitate the summon of a Liger Dancer, basically making it so that the materials to summon this card are not actually all that problematic. So getting it out onto the field is actually not a big issue, which would generally speaking be the big point of this card. Oh, it's difficult to summon, therefore it has a big payoff, and that big payoff is the fact that it's unaffected by card effects. Period. Now, technically it does say except for Lunalight cards, but that doesn't matter except for in the mirror match, where at that point it doesn't matter because it's a mirror match. Unaffected by card effects, straight up, means there's very few ways to deal with this card outside of just walking over it in combat and by boosting up some sort of monster so that you can attack into this effectively and deal with it. Now, with that being said, it has 3,800 attack and 3,500 defense, making it not exactly the easiest thing to walk over in combat. Generally speaking, it's going to be pretty difficult, and your opponent isn't exactly going to just let you attack into this. So, yeah. There you go. The answers to this card are either walk into it or hope and pray that you draw a kaiju or similar like card that allows you to immediately deal with this. So it's either luck or attack. Okay, that's not that big of a deal. There's a lot of ways to get over 3,800. Almost every deck has some sort of capacity to deal with this card in some way, right? Just like getting over that 3,800 threshold is not exactly impossible. Right. Now, it does have another line of text where it says it can make a second attack during each battle phase. Now, that's not that big of a deal, right? Having a second attack is fine. However, on a big statted monster, that can be a bit of an issue. However, this is where things immediately showcase how poorly designed of a Yu-Gi-Oh card Liger Dancer is. Liger Dancer says, once per turn, quick effect. You can send one Lunalight monster from your extra deck to the grave to destroy all your opponent's special summoned monsters. Now, here's the thing. Two things with this. First of all, remember how I said the best way to deal with this is through combat? Through actually walking over it in battle? Well, now you can't do that, because almost every single monster that would be able to be big enough to walk over this card is now going to have an issue of being destroyed because they were special summoned. There are very few monsters that would allow you to even be able to walk over this card and still have some sort of battle protection. But it's still doable. Okay, sure. However, because of the nature of this effect as well, it means that if you were to threaten the summoning of said card, they can just kind of say no and nuke your field. They can literally just be like, nuh-uh, and then away goes your field anyway. And, well, dang, it would be a real shame if you tried to make that monster. Not only that, but the second thing is that this is not a hard once per turn. So if you summon multiple Liger Dancers, which is where the materials coming up should be an issue, but alas aren't, if you were to make a second one, you could just do this again. And it's not like Lunalights are light on extra deck space. They can specifically facilitate a whole bunch of monsters in the extra deck for Liger Dancer to utilize. So it's not like they're going to run out of a whole bunch of Raigekis. So yeah, for the most part, this card answers the cards that would answer this card. Or you get lucky and you just draw the out. Those are your two options. Hope and pray you draw the out to this card, which, by the way, again, they could have two, which means that if you draw a kaiju, it's useless, or if you draw a lava golem and they only summon the one, or they only have the one monster, you also still die. Or, like, if you need your normal summon or something like that, you're still just dead. Oh, hooray. So you either hope and pray that you draw the correct card and you're able to win the game off of that, or you try and bait out one of these interactions so much so that you can then still push through and deal with this card through combat, which is, again, kind of unrealistic and still requires a fair amount of luck. Or I guess the third option is to prevent them from even having this guy hit the field due to hand traps and the like. But the problem is that that's not exactly consistent. There are some cards that would have the ability to do that, but again, due to the nature of Lunalight and the way that this deck has the ability to banish materials and stuff like that, they don't actually need to, put the monsters on field. You can't, like, Nibiru it away or anything of that nature. For the most part, they're going to have the ability to summon at least one of these, even with a myriad of hand traps thrown at them. Maybe it stops them, but it kind of just depends. Again, it's more luck-based, right? And this is where I think this card in particular fails at card design. Similar in nature to that of Imperial Order. Imperial Order says negate all spell effects on the field. The problem with Imperial Order was that most of the ways to deal with this card in particular were spells. The best way to actually deal with a card like Imperial Order was to activate a spell card that destroyed a spell trap, or that destroys multiple spell traps. The problem is, this answers that. This goes, no, you don't actually get to deal with my Imperial Order, then all of your other spell effects also don't get to work, because that's how this card works. And not only did it get an errata, it still was ban-worthy after the errata, which made it even more silly to see a card working so very similarly to that of Imperial Order, where the outs to the card are answered by the text on the card. It's terrible game design, and it's baffling to see that this card exists and is not immediately banned, not immediately sparking the same kind of reactions that something like Imperial Order would. It's baffling to see such a terribly designed Yu-Gi-Oh card exist in such a way. It's hilarious. If this were to exist in any other card game, and it just straight up did not have an answer, or the answers to the card were broken by the very card it was trying to answer, it would immediately go away. But alas, here we are, within Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, having to deal with such a terribly designed Yu-Gi-Oh! Card. Hip hip hooray. I love Liger Dancer. What a great addition to Yu-Gi-Oh!